an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hamlin, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. This is going to be a super power hour show that is truly syndicated international. Right off the bat, as you know, this is international because my co-host is broadcasting right from his studio in London. The one and only Johnny Webb, who happened to be here for a few weeks, and we did some shows from the City of Angels where I reside. And of course we have our guest, who I'll introduce in a second, broadcasting from where he is located, which is in Hawaii. So you got literally several time zones there. Let's just start with the Hawaiian Aleutian time zone. I would happen to be a little after 5 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Pacific time, or 7 p.m. Pacific time here, 5 p.m. Hawaii Aleutian time, where our guest is 10 p.m. Eastern time, of course, for those of you on the East Coast of the United States, and our friends in the UK, where Johnny Webb is sitting. It happens to be 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Now, tonight is a very special night. Why? Because we're going to be talking about some very, very crucial topics, not to mention it happens to be the very first show since we've had the most historic election ever. So historic, in fact, I have never in my life have seen such ruckus that has been going on in the streets, or have ever read about so many protests about somebody. Now, let me give you something I read that was really, really interesting. I hope you all remember Kurt Cobain and his untimely death in 1994, where he shot up a bunch of heroin and then blew his head off with a shotgun. Now, when he was rocking out and making money and getting that fame, he said something to the effect. Now, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to say it verbatim. All I can do is, of course, paraphrase it. And he said something to the effect that the only way to change the political sickness or what's going on in Washington, D.C. is to have an outsider come in as president. The outsider will probably have to be a billionaire, somebody such as Donald J. Trump. Now, this was said no less than 22 years ago when he died, and of course it could go a few years before that. So it could be anywhere in the realm of 25, somewhere between 2 decades and 3 decades ago. The point is, this was almost forecast, but little did he know, looking up from in the skies above, that he was right on the button when he talked about Trump being the president. Now, with that being said, I would like to introduce our guest superstar. He happens to be former Navy SEAL, Lieutenant Robert Weigand. Robert, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
I'll try to bring something to this show tonight that people haven't heard yet.
Exactly. That's what we always try to do, is we want to wake people's minds up, and we want to give them a different perspective of what is going on in this world, which is why we've been fortunate enough to have celebrities, politicians, and researchers in all areas that people really seem to pay attention. Now, just before we were doing some testing before we got on live, which for those of you folks who've been waiting, sorry we were a couple minutes late, but we are live. Robert, you were about to tell me something that was going to tie in Billy Meyer with Trump, which I think is great because the two topics of tonight that I wanted to talk about were Trump, which on the other side of the coin is, of course, the Clinton family and the foundation, and, of course, Lord knows what they've been up to leading up to this election, and Billy Meyer, because I wanted to talk about that too as well. So can you tell us what Billy Meyer told you about Mr. Trump?
Yeah, it's a big topic, but he basically said that neither Hillary nor Donald Trump are fit to be president. This is what he said, and I'll read it to you because I don't want to interject any of my own stuff.
Sure.
So the question was this: who do you think? Instead of like who's going to win the presidency, what do you think of these guys? And this is Billy Meyer's response. I think it is my personal opinion. Now he says it's personal opinion because he has private conversations and the playbook. He has the playbook, what's going on, what's coming, but he doesn't just offer it up anymore like he used to. It just doesn't help. It just makes people more fearful, and he doesn't want to do that. So he, again, I think this is my personal opinion that if Clinton wins the election, Hillary Clinton, then the devil is loose, just as with George Bush. She is an advocate of the death penalty, which I'll explain in a minute why he's against it. It will then be just as bad in America as with Bush. And I think that if Trump wins, it will be just as dumb. I think these are a couple of people. They are both not fit for presidency. As for the American Civil Wars, yes, that will wreck the whole of America. And then in the Enoch Prophecies he published in 1987, he referred to the Civil Wars. This is what he says back in 1987. Yet the misery on earth will continue as two terrible civil wars will break out in America, whereby one will follow the other. Afterwards, the United States of America will break apart and deadly hostility will prevail among her, which then leads to the division into 5 different territories, and it cannot be prevented that sectarian fanatics will play a dictatorial role. In May of 2016, he validated and said that the Civil War is going to happen. And it will last for, I think it was 888 days. Now, from there, you look at
888 days. He's talked about this in 1987, you're saying?
Yeah, he published it in 1987. But he knew about it in 1951. What happened? What's so weird about Billy Myers? Like when I went and I visited with him in 2010, what is so interesting about this case is that everything that I went as a lead from his comments or his photos or whatever, I drilled into them, and I always found that what he does is he just kind of gives you a comment. He doesn't tell you how it's going to happen. He doesn't drill it down into the greater depths of she said, and let's, bifurcate this thing in a million ways and dissect it. He just doesn't do that. He just tells you what's going to happen. And here's another thing that's interesting. Back in 1901, he said, if the world and its humanity are thus ruined, then it is the earth human himself who is the originator, whereby he creates the real cause of it by propelling his overpopulation into ever-increasing numbers. Now, this is a massive topic, and my life intertwined with a lot of the things that he says, where I actually experienced a lot of the things that he talks about, but it was when I was in the Special Forces or working with the CIA. I realized that those people at the top, I think they read his stuff, and then they try to change events or move them in a direction. And he's come back and said they can do that all they want. All they're doing is speeding up the prophecies. They're going to happen if they do that. It's not that they have the power to change them. That's just going to happen. So I started spending a lot of time over the years looking at what he says, overlaying it to the events that we see happening with Trump, with Hillary, with Obama, with the riots in the streets, with basically the world and how they look at us. And he's right.
They do look at us pretty horribly compared to 30 years ago or 25 years ago, right? I mean, we're not the superpower he once used to be.
No, he also said that NATO would turn their backs on us as we enter into this era of climate change, and we have these fantastic economic catastrophes due to earthquakes and floods and hurricanes. The world is not going to come to our aid. We're on our own. We are literally now sitting ducks, and we are eating ourselves alive. This controversy between Trump and Hillary is a psyop. The entire thing is a psychological operation against the American people. I live in Hawaii, and the Hawaiians here, they just kind of look at the mainland as like, we don't care about it. So there's no issues going on here. No one cares. But I went over to LA last week, and the fear is palpable.
Yes.
But yet no one can tell me what they're afraid of.
I know. I could tell you this by living in LA, broadcasting from LA right now, while there are riots going on literally a few miles from here, stretching all the way to Long Beach, even to San Diego, going up north to Portland, Oregon, and beyond, all the way across the country through Chicago and into New York City in front of Trump Towers. And these riots and protests are not just peaceful Martin Luther King protests marching down the streets. No, they're burning effigies of Trump. They are bashing windows and flipping cars over and blocking freeways, which kind of makes it hard for someone like me to drive anywhere in Los Angeles area, because there has not been one single night since Tuesday night when it would have been Wednesday morning when the election was called, and specifically later Wednesday morning, closer to Eastern time, I'd say about 10 a.m., maybe 11 a.m., right around before noon. The point is that's when Hillary Clinton finally came out and admitted to her loss. And from that night on, these protests, which are now can be categorized as riots, have not only increased in numbers and damage, but every single night, what you see on the news and what I see in person is that these riots are growing every single day. It's like these people are just adding their friends and their family and their neighbors and just saying, come with us, It's like, so there was 1,000 people the night before, 1,200 last night, and now it's 1,500 just in one area. And again, as you know, this is not just Los Angeles. This is literally going around from all the blue states. The blue states, not the red states, of course, because and here's another ironic thing that when you mentioned about Trump and Bush. First of all, Bush is, even though Bill Clinton called Trump to congratulate him after Hillary did the very next day, and very many a large set of world leaders have called Trump, from China to the UK to Japan to everybody, which showed that a lot of people were really paying attention. But who has yet to call? Any of the Bushes. Not Jeb, who ran against him in the primaries, not George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. or George W. Bush, who was president, as everyone knows, from 2000 to 2008, which, may I add, back in 2000 when he won against Al Gore, that was the other hugely contested race. Why? Because George W. Bush won through the electoral votes, not in popular. And Trump was advocating to get rid of the electoral college, but that's what he used. That's what he won by. He actually lost in popular votes. So I wanted to drive that in there since you were talking about these protests, because I can literally see it and hear them through the night. And these things go on till 2, 3, 4, 5, sometimes till it's daylight. I mean, it amazes me that it just seems there's not going to be any rest anytime soon. And Senator Barbara Boxer wants to contest the race. How? By finally getting rid of the electoral college. which if she does that, and it would require a 3/4 majority to get that bill into play, which, especially having a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate and of course a Republican president, you have to face the fact that it's probably not going to happen, because that means they would forfeit their presidency, because this is one of the few times in history where one party holds everything, including the United States Supreme Court, which, if those of you who don't practice law, let me tell you, SCOTUS, which is Supreme Court of the United States of America, is by far the most powerful third of the country. Each of those justices, which they have been as many as 12 in the past, but usually we keep it at 9, an odd number for a good reason, because since we've had 8 lately, a lot of cases where they can't seem to decide are thrown back down to lower courts, and they'll work their way back up and just keep going in revolutions until someone gets in there to stop it. But these people, when they're appointed as presidents or are appointed as by the presidents, they stay in office for the rest of their lives or until they retire. So you're talking about having a justice, or maybe a chief justice, which we already have a Chief Justice Roberts, who was appointed at the young age of 45. He is not going to give up at 60 or 70. He's going to go up like Rehnquist was and literally die in office, because they know how much power they really have. So I wanted to throw that in there for a lot of people who didn't quite understand what was going on. But continue, Robert, please.
Yeah, if we continue to stare into this abyss that we're looking at with these politics, we'll miss the point of what's going on a bigger scale. I'm going to back up here really far back, and I'm going to throw something out, and we can discuss it. Overpopulation is real. The people at the top know it. They need to wipe out probably 2/3 of the population.
More.
They're making plans for it.
Look at the Georgia Guidestones. They say a plausible. I don't have the exact words in front of me, but the point is they set a number of what they think is a sustainable number of people to live on Earth would be 500 million. Now we're approaching 7 billion. So that's not getting rid of 2/3. That's getting rid out of 6.5 billion people just to leave 500 million left. That's a lot. That is way more than 2/3. I'd have to calculate exactly what the percentage is, but that is, think about it. That is, 6.5 out of 7. That's a fairly high percentage of what they want to abolish and kill.
I was talking to Michael Horn yesterday, and he's the official representative in the United States for Billy Meyer. And as we were talking about this issue, overpopulation has been a big deal for the planners, trying to explain to us what it's causing us. And they have a lot of literature and a lot of discussion with Billy Meyer. These are all, printed out about the issues of overpopulation and what it does to us. But here's just a couple of things. I'm going to go through them. There's about 10 things, and there's a lot more, but these are the main 10 ones.
Sure.
Okay, when you have overpopulation, you end up having more problems than you can solve. They come on you faster than you can resolve. It becomes impossible at a certain point to resolve any of the issues or problems that are occurring due to an increase in population in a certain area. When I was in LA last week, I noticed that the soil moisture is almost gone. I've never seen that before. I have a house up in Newport Coast. The air was always crisp, like being in the mountains. I was there last week. It felt like a desert. I got in a plane because I can fly, and I flew around, and I see the tops of hills being cut off and more housing put in. I'm talking multi-thousands of homes. And I see the reservoirs, and they're 25% of their capacity. Then we talk about the Cascadian Fault. And before I go off into that, I want to stay on this overpopulation thing. The second thing we talked about, how many people are really on the Earth, and how can the Pleiadians count them? And what the Pleiadians told Billy was, oh, that's easy. The frequency or the whatever, the thought process in your brain creates a certain frequency, and
right.
each one of us is unique on the planet, and they just measure all those, and they come up with over 8.5, about 8.6 billion people right now on the planet. We're being lied to how many there really are. Now, here's an interesting thing I'm going to move into here real quick and come back to the overpopulation. There are some discussions between the Pleiadians and Billy talking about another planet 5 light years away who have been coming here and taking plants and seeds back to their planet. They had 9.5 billion people. Mm-hmm. Their planet is very similar to ours. And about 8 years ago, they had an oxygen collapse. They were being warned by the Pleiadians, reduce your population or you're going to have an oxygen collapse. They didn't listen. They're not a warring people. That planet is dead. The Pleiadians and the others in the Federation went there with their great spacers and took as many people as possible to migrate them off and save their lives, but the majority of people died on the planet. The planet had oxygen, got to the point where it couldn't sustain the amount of people that were on the planet because they had cut everything down to make room for themselves. So we are moving in that direction, but the people who are in power, which I mentioned last time that I actually saw, I was introduced, they know this population is a major issue. And instead of coming to us and explaining it to us, and people, if you give them the truth and tell them what's going on, people are pretty rational. Mm-hmm. They'll figure it out. They're not doing that for us. They'd rather push us into war. They'd rather have us go crazy on each other and blow ourselves up. This Trump-Hillary thing going on right now is us fighting ourselves. The best psyop I've ever seen happen. I didn't think they could do it in the States. I thought people were better than that. But apparently there's a whole section of society that is brain dead, and they'll fall for anything. If you don't have control over your own thoughts, then who does? And that's the key of the spirit teachings. It helped. When I studied this stuff, I disbelieved. Look, in the SEAL teams, if I get misinformation and I run with my platoon out into Iraq or Afghanistan with misinformation, the odds of us coming back are 0. I have to make sure I'm getting the truth. And I deduce when I'm being lied to. And I'm going to give you a real example in the SEAL teams. This is highly classified. We were in the first Desert Storm Iraq war, we were planning to go in and get these semi-trucks that had missiles on them, Scud missiles. And we were being told that there were no Republican Guard in the area and that it was just these lone trucks out there running around. Well, I was dating this girl, and her roommate was an intel officer who I became friends with, and she took me outside and told me, don't say anything to anyone, but I have a commander standing over my shoulder where I have to black out the troop strength of the Republican Guard. There are 25,000 Republican Guard in the area. If you go in there, you're dead. You'll never come back. So Special Forces sent in 2 full platoons, 24 guys, never heard from again. If you read the book Bat 21, where they're going in for the Scud missiles, you can hear their story of a couple of guys that survived that and what they went through. So Intel knows the truth, but they lie to the soldiers. They lie to the SEALs. And so I was told my first day in the SEAL teams, don't believe intelligence because it's not intelligence. You have to get your own. And so we went out and did our own research and made up our own decisions on what we did. And that's one of the reasons why the SEAL teams are so successful. So with all that training, I brought that into the Myra material and started doing the same thing. And I found out it's true. The entire thing is true. They're not lying. They're telling you the truth. There is a Pleiadian race. They're 450 light years away. They're out of sync with us dimensionally by a fraction of a second. And they come into our space, and they've been trying to help us for centuries. I'm going to tell you something that I just found out. Really
centuries
surprising.
Or millennia?
Millennia. Look, they're part of our problem. Their ancestors were part of our problem. Okay, I'm going to tell you a couple of things I just learned recently. About 300 plus thousand years ago, the Larians and the Weigand came here to this planet. They started interbreeding naturally and using genetic experiments to create what we have here today. Now, the Asians came here from another planet. The blacks came from another planet. So we're kind of been cross-pollinated. But for the most part, 2/3 of the planet right now are not from this planet originally, indigenously, or from other places. All this information is kept from us. So we're walking around like a bunch of lemmings, ready to run off a cliff at the behest of anything that makes us afraid. We go crazy because we don't have control over our thoughts anymore. Religion helped us to give over our control of our thoughts to something else outside of ourselves, whereas the spirit teachings teaches you how to bring it back in. Well, let's move on. And so as the Weigans and Lyrans are manipulating and giving us the religion and all this stuff, they start realizing they're pulling away our power, and they're kind of starting to feed on it, and they get all screwed up. Well, I call those people the controllers. There's not a lot of them left, but they're still there. And then there's this, I call it the table of 450. You can look it up as the committee of 300. Instead of getting in all that minutia, what I'm realizing is that these people know these spirit teachings just as much as Billy does, or those who study it, but they ain't going to tell you. And they don't have any morality, and they don't care the outcome. They don't care about the effect that they create with what they're doing. They just want power. And that's what I saw. That's what I went and was introduced to these people. They only care about power, and that's Hillary Clinton. Okay, you want to get into Hillary Clinton?
Absolutely.
My background?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Look, I moved here to Hawaii for a reason, because when I started reading all of the prophecies of Billy, and I started layering it on what's going on in America, not only the climate change and the geographical changes that are coming to America, but also the politics of things, and about the state of the thinking of the masses of America. The mass consciousness of America is going suicidal. It's degenerating. And so I moved my family to Hawaii. And I didn't do it I did it in 90 days. When I finally clicked on me, I was out of there in 90 days. So here's the thing with Hillary. And now I'm going to get off the Meyer material. I'm going to go into my personal life. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds of my personal life. I grew up a little boy. I was a Mormon. I became a missionary. I went out and proselyted God to everybody in Missouri and Illinois that I could. I spoke to physically. I had to keep track, 120,000 people. I taught. I was a minister. I could marry people. Then I came back, and that's a 2-year gig. It's not a 2-week thing like you see in other churches. I did it for 2 years. Then I came back and went to college. I went to Brigham Young University, and then I joined the military. Yes, and then I joined the military and ended up in Pearl Harbor, ended up all over the world. I ended up with a green card, residency card for Australia, and I got out of the SEAL teams to go into the Army in Australia and to join the SAS, because I wanted to start seeing what special forces were like around the world. I had a change of mind. It doesn't matter what that was. And then I just moved on with my life. Then went to law school.
Let me ask you, before you went to law school, what do you think about Israeli Mossad? Because I've heard rumors, and I would think that this is actually true, since the U.S. is really backing the state of Israel, the nation of Israel. And, of course, in 1948, the Brits, of course, Johnny can comment on that, created a section from Palestine to give to the Israelis. The Mossad is one of the highest trained military groups out there. However, they literally came because of us sending our SEALs over there and Deltas and Rangers and to train them. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true. We trained them. In fact, I worked with about 50 embassies around the world, and we would go into the countries that invited us, and we would their special forces. Yeah, that's true. The Mossad, look, you get into the Vatican, the Catholic Church, you get into all this stuff.
Yeah, the Vatican's got the Swiss Guard.
I'll tell you what, if we get into the minutiae of everything, we really lose the forest for the trees. Mm-hmm. And I try not to get into the trees too much. I can, but we don't have enough time to do that. So I try to keep it general so people can dig into the comments I make and figure it out for themselves.
Exactly.
Here's some other things that when we go back to overpopulation, all our problems are really being produced by overpopulation. Hillary Clinton, a witch. She sacrifices kids. It's being done by proxy for her now.
I was
She
going to
doesn't do it
say,
personally.
yeah, there's been at least publicly of what we've heard about 2 murders from the Clinton Foundation, and that's just what's knowledge that's out there. I would think that this has been going on for decades, and I'm talking about before Bill Clinton became president, when he was governor of Arkansas. I mean, we're talking about going back to Yale law.
Before Yale law. It's before that. Look, okay, I practice Palo Mayombe. I'm an Nkise, a holder of the pot. I also pretty much can act as a tata, which is a high priest. If you don't know what it is, just look it up.
Is that
Palo
the
Mayombe.
left-hand path?
Yeah, it's a left-hand path. It's the dark path.
Gotcha.
It's working with the dead. It's having pots where you infuse them with a spirit, with blood, animal sacrifice. You can use humans too if you want. There are different spirits, different personalities. You work with the pot. You conjure the dead in the graveyards. I did it all. When I look at a witch, look, they're like my brother. I can see them. Just like I look at a SEAL or a SF guy or a ranger, I know who they are immediately. Why? Because I am. I can read who I am. The masses can't do that. They cannot look at Hillary and see any evilness in her. They get magitized by her spells. They don't know anything. They don't have control over their own minds. Someone else is in control of their thinking. Not in control of their thinking. Those writing that you see now do not have any semblance of live thinking, control of their thoughts. Let's find a solution. They're just running off pure emotion and fear. So what Hillary does in witchcraft, when you take the left-hand path, and when I look at her, I think she went down the Luciferian path. Because the Luciferian path is very narrow, and you can only deal with Lucifer. And you have to do things exactly his way, or he'll kick your butt. And it's a life of halves. So when you give him $100 and you expect $100 value out of his return favor, he only gives you $50. So you got to double down with $200 to get the other $50. And that's how Lucifer works.
I didn't know
and that's why you go down the path of the bottomless pit. The Bible, the bottomless pit.
Huh. Interesting.
So I was on that path, and I pulled myself out of it. But hard. It was costly. I don't want to get into it because I'll give people ideas. And that's the last thing I want to do is give people ideas how to do something wrong or do something dark. I don't want to give people those ideas. I talked to Johnny about it and broke down one of the things, and I asked him, please don't take this out to public because I'm just letting you know that, so that you know that I'm not talking the story, that I'm real. Well, I don't need to go out there and prove myself. Just people need to go out and look at what's going on around. Hillary is part of the table of 450 or involved with the committee of 300, and Sidney Blumenthal is a messenger boy for the committee of 300. Sidney Blumenthal is the messenger boy for the committee of 300. I'm going to tell you what the players had to say about Barack Obama. Barack Obama and Hillary are in the same club. Well, when he became president, Patah's telling Billy, and he says, I don't want to name the names of those who are in power and control Barack Obama, because I don't want Barack Obama to have a problem, or you, or the people around him. But Barack Obama came in with some good ideas, but he's never been able to do anything with them, and he's become complacent, and he's actually become kind of mentally unstable, because he has had his life threatened by these people who are in power, and they've told him they'll either take his life, like John F. Kennedy, or his family members' lives, and he has to do what he does. So he takes the brunt of all the blame of all the stupid things that he does. But
let me say this real quick too. First of all, with regards to President Obama, and it's ironic we say President Obama, even though he's got 7 weeks to go before President-elect Trump becomes president. And it's funny how in the past they would just, even though it was president-elect, they would just say president. It's almost as if they're giving you hints that he's not going to survive to be actually president. That they're trying to change something. That's why they're always calling him Mr. President-elect. But
do you mind if I go down this really ethereal place for a moment?
I do, but let me just say one thing. With regards to Obama, he has been approached and trained and was told that you're going to be the first African-American president, and this happened at California Occidental College back in 30-some years ago. So they told him then, you're going to be it. This is the path you're going to take. We're going to get you to be a senator. And as a junior senator, boom, you're elected and you're this. Almost as if it's rigged. But the point is it just didn't occur in, say, 2006, where he threw a presidential bid and got the Democratic Party to back him. No, this is something that has been in the making for decades.
That's correct. And the players back up everything you just said. They say the same thing. And he can't do anything. He'll get killed. That's what Patah told Billy, that his life is under threat if he doesn't do what he's told, but he'll take the brunt of all the things that he does, but it's not him doing it. It's these, and those are the same guys that are going to control Trump. So look, I'm going to tell you something. When I was doing all this witchcraft, it made me almost clairvoyant, like I could remote view. And I had people around the country that I would call on the phone and I'd tell them all kinds of stuff, and they would freak out. And I'd tell you what, if we were personally together and I was able to touch you or hold your hand or shake your hand, I could see through and through you. I don't know how that works or how it happened, but that was one of the things that came with being a witch. Well, when I was introduced to the reason I became a witch, okay, this is kind of funny. When I was working in the Philippines, and then I was eventually introduced to the power brokers, the Committee of 300, and the controllers that are over them. It did something to me. It changed me. It gave porosity to things and events to see through and past what is being shown on the veneer. So what happened on Monday, November 7th, once I saw them and I was introduced to them, it's like I have this connection with them now. So when people are out there and get connected to the Committee of 300 or the controllers or to these power groups or to these witches like Hillary, what happens is people start getting very fearful because those people can see what you're doing without having to be present with you. It's almost like now Billy Meyer in the Spirit Teachings actually breaks it down how that works. There is a mechanism to do that. So what I saw on November 7th on Monday was a meeting was going on in a room that was sheltered from the ability to remote view it, that it was like almost cloaked, and that the power brokers were in there and they were trying to figure out what to do. Things just didn't go exactly the way that they expected because the American people started waking up. Mm-hmm. Now, the Pleiadians told Billy December 12, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, what that really was is that we would shift from Pisces to Aquarius, and in that 8-hour window of transitioning between the two constellations, the central sun of the galaxy shown on our planet, when its radiations are very powerful, and she said to Billy Semyazi that we would have like a spiritual awakening within ourselves that would start off slow, and then it would grow, and it would stay with us for centuries. And it's going to move us into a new society, which I want to get into in the next. And the awareness of people will start to expand, and you're seeing that now. It's happening with the American people. The American people are waking up, but just not here. It's all over the world. People are waking up to the big con.
They are, and the show is proof of that by so many people listening and all these networks that have asked us to add our show to their lineup, which means there's clearly interest that wasn't there 20 to 30 years ago when this topic and these topics that we're talking about now, not just UFOs, but everything from what Hillary's past was to predictions, Billy Meyer, was once taboo and ridiculous. Now people are opening up their eyes and saying, wow, there's got to be something to this.
Okay, so what's going on now that I see from all this information, and this is me talking, I'm not talking for Billy Meyer, and I'm not talking for anyone else. This is me and my deducing of what's happening. This committee met. They saw Trump winning. They wanted to figure it out. They threw him in there as a joke. But now that he's winning, they're trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So what it is, the American people are waking up, and they don't like that. One of the things of witchcraft, what you do when you're given something that you don't like, what you do is you flip it upside down, and you give it back as vomit. And that's what they're doing. I would just call it Luciferianism, where they're taking and this movement with Trump and they're turning it upside down, and whatever you expect, you're going to get the opposite. And that's what they're pushing now. I don't know how this thing's going to play out. I look at the Meyer material and I use it as a guideline. For example, the Meyer material, the prophetic stuff that he put out there, is a playbook of what's coming if we keep doing what we're doing. Well, unfortunately, we can't help ourselves now, and we're past the point of no return. So now I look at the playbook and I try to determine what in the playbook is going to occur next or in soon time, like near time. And what I'm seeing here is that a great potential now that Obama just stays in office and that Trump never takes it over. I'm seeing I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but it came to me back in May that December 15th, we'll know if Trump will take office or not. The date is December 15th. That came to me in May of 2016.
So you're talking about a month from today, literally.
Yes, literally.
A month from today.
And I said, when I saw these riots on Wednesday, I told people around the country, personal friends, like I said, please mark my words on this.
You're talking about Wednesday, the day after the election. Was
November 9.
Yes, the first day of the riots.
I told my friends around me, I called them and I told them, you mark my words, the riots are going to start and they're going to get worse and they're never going to subside and they're going to roll us into civil war. That's where we're headed.
Yeah, they're going to go through the inauguration, and like you said, December 15th, the reason why I see that as a major date is because of what Barbara Boxer has said. Now, if you don't mind holding on for a quick 2 minutes, everybody, we have to take a quick soft break. We're going to continue in quick 2 short minutes while you hear a quick note from our sponsors. Everybody hang tight. We'll be back with so much more with Lieutenant Robert Weigand from the Navy SEALs, and has so much access to Billy Meyer, and of course has literally lived this life in so many countries and has seen far, far more than anybody else. Hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back.
This is George Tsoukalos, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
These creatures are very, very strange. They're anomalous.
It is the age of revelations. Bizarre creatures. The false perception of reality exposed.
Just go to the Dr. J's, website. You'll see it on the left-hand side. It's like right there. Click the link. Guys, what can I tell you? I mean, it's $40, but you get a DVD and a book plus three bonuses. Communion CD, a year subscription to our Politics, Property, and Supernatural magazine, which comes in your email box. Watchers 3, which is $20 for that DVD. Fingerprints of the Supernatural. We promise you will not be disappointed. And Dr. J gets a cut of the proceeds. So everybody's happy. You support him, you support us, and it's all good. And you get to educate yourself on what's going on, because we've just scratched the surface here. Trust me.
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Torpedo impact now, 40 seconds. Torpedo impact, 25 seconds.
All ahead flank. All ahead flank. I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
Ladies and gentlemen of the world of our Earth, we are back 10 minutes shy of 8 p.m. I meant to do the soft break a little bit about halfway. I meant to do a power hour, but clearly there is so much knowledge coming out that I knew we were going to go much, much longer. Now, right before we pick up where we left off, I just want to make a major announcement. As you know, we are broadcasting on our very own Coast to Coast PM radio network. And of course, this is also syndicated on Late Night in the Midlands, PSN Radio, Deep Program Radio in the United Kingdom, and of course, there is a new station in the UK that Johnny has worked very hard to get us going there. And we are also talking to a station in Spain as well as in Australia, so we can continue to spread the word as we've received questions, calls, and comments from 43 countries and counting. Now, one major announcement I would like to make is our guest, Navy SEAL Lieutenant, retired Navy SEAL Lieutenant Bob Weigand, or Robert Weigand, will be having his very own show right here on Coast to Coast PM Radio Network. Now, with that being said, let's pick up exactly where we left off. Now, I want to say one thing before we talk about the Civil War and December 15th. When I cast my ballot, 12 p.m. or so, give or take, in Pacific time, right, 7 hours before all the polling stations closed, which would mean a long time before all the ballots were counted, this state was already called. I mean, that blew my mind away. How could it be called when it hadn't even been halfway through the day of polling yet? I mean, the polls were only open, I think, 4 to 6 hours before I cast my ballot. 7 more hours to go, yet I cast my ballot and went home before I went off to work again and just turned on the news just to see what the East Coast was doing as far as, the exit polls coming in. And I saw that California was already cast as blue. Now, here's an interesting note. If you take California and take a line down the middle, vertically, cut it, where you have one side being the coast and the other side connecting to the states and the mainlands, you have the liberals, Democrats on the coastal side, yet the other side would be Republicans. So why was it that the entire state was called as a blue state, as a Democratic state? 55 delegates, 55 points for the Electoral College, which is by far the largest state that can contribute to an election, was called long before I had even cast my ballot. And this reminds me of when I had Senator Mike Gravel on this show, and he was talking about election rigging. And he said election rigging is not new. It didn't start in 2000 with the Bush and Gore or even a Nixon era. He said that we have had election rigging going back to the founding fathers of the United States of America. Back to George Washington, literally. This is on record. Anybody wants to see it, all you have to do is go to drjradiolive.com And remember, that is the only name you have to remember. DRJ Radio Live. That is the name for every single social media account, including YouTube, where we archive our shows. A lot more need to be archived because there is only a fraction. I'd say there's about 200 shows archived of about, we're coming on to 6 years. So there's a lot more that needs to get up there. But the point is, just Google election rigging Dr. J Radio Live, or go to YouTube and find Dr. J Radio Live, the channel, and look for Senator or Snowden or Senator election rigging, and you will find it. And this is something that I have heard from every major politician. So that's what caused me concern. Now, I want to get back to what we were just talking about, Bob. And of course, I want to give thanks to Johnny Webb, who's awake now, literally going on 4 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Johnny Webb, how you doing there, buddy?
Pretty good there, Dr. J. And Bob, how are you, sir?
Oh, good, Johnny. Good to talk to you.
Yes. Now, so
I got a quick question.
Go for it.
Word on the street is that George Soros is paying for these demonstrators to protest Trump.
Thank you for saying that.
Saying here that even though he's paying for all these coaches to bus all these demonstrators into these major cities, Trump's responded by saying he's not even the president yet, and he's still already creating new jobs.
Well, he does have to actually appoint 4,000 people from now until January 20th before the inauguration, so he could have a cabinet and all his staff, from the White House press secretary to everything else. 4,000 jobs will be created from now, and there's already been a few. And here's the ironic part. You had Trump talking about, getting rid of this political sickness we have in Washington, getting rid of these special interest groups, when he himself admitted to being one of the, billionaires that would donate large sums of money to candidates, and he would regularly play golf with Bill Clinton. And he said he would do everything to get out of this political nightmare that we have up there. Yet, what is his first appointee? Reince Priebus, who happens to be the chairman of the Republican National Committee. Now, if that's the case, then if he was staying true to his word of getting rid of these politicians, lifelong politicians who are getting kickbacks, bribes, and so on and so forth, why is the chief of staff of Donald J. Trump going to be one of the largest of these people, the chairman of the Republican National Committee? I just thought that was very ironic, because you would think if he's going to be bringing all outsiders in, instead he brings a full-on red politician down to the bone. I just thought that was ironic, and not to mention, of course, what I talked about, that the states were being called. But, Bob, I wanted to talk to you about the civil wars, because I've already heard about California, right here where I'm living and broadcasting from, is already even mentioning that they would like to secede from the Union, which is, in essence, would cause, of course, as you know,
sorry,
it would absolutely cause civil war.
Seeing it now. Well, what I'm seeing is just going to progressively become more riotous, and then you'll have anarchy. And it was a year or two ago, he said that by 2020, America will be in anarchy. And so I took it as, well, it would be just after 2020. It could be 3 to 5 years. I really don't know the date. Billy Meyer will not give a date. He just doesn't want to cause fear. He wants us to try and resolve our problems and calm things down. But we are not able to do it. We're gone past that tipping point. And we're not going to be allowed to have peace. The controllers will not allow us to have peace.
Now, you have actual access to him, not just Michael Horn, right? You actually speak to Billy himself?
I've spoken to him. I have direct access to Christian. It's pretty much an open community. I mean, you can talk to anyone you want.
Well, the reason I'm asking you this is when you launch your show right here on our very own Coast to Coast PM radio network, can people expect an interview with you and Billy Meyer?
You know, let me see if I can do that. I will check into it. I promise you that. And I'll find out and I will let you know.
That would be great. That would be a great kick. I can't violate the FCC rules, so great kick ASS start, or something in the first few months of you broadcasting. I think that would be great. But you being on the network would be a great asset, because obviously everyone knows that every time you've been on, people have great respect for you. And even when David Cerita was on, and I had you guys chat for a few minutes before, that every single time David Cerita's been on since, he wanted you to be on with him. So people already have a liking towards you, and I think you're going to fit very well within this community as a host.
Oh, thank you very much. I really hope so. I'm trying to bring information and answers to people and trying to help people. I don't want to see the prophecies fulfilled.
Neither do I, because if they are fulfilled, then we have a very bleak future to look forward to, if that's the case.
The key is free will.
Yes.
Do not fear.
Yes.
Stand up for the correct creational laws and recommendations. And those are the keys. But the key of all of it is free will. That's one thing that is a massive topic. And what I was told by the controllers is how you loose yourself from them is through your free will. And they told me not to tell that.
Now,
if
free will is so important to us, why is our government, the United States government, doing everything they can to control us? Let me give you an example. When I went to Amsterdam a few years ago with a girlfriend that I was dating who was studying abroad, she took a year off to study in the UK, so I went and stayed with her for a month in England, and then we took a trip to Amsterdam. And we went to the canals in the heart of Amsterdam, and we rented one of those petty boats, where you use your, essentially like a bicycle, two people, basically riding a bike in a boat to propel it, right? Now, if in California, when I took her to Catalina Island to do the exact same activity, we had to sign a contract, sign a waiver, we had to give a deposit, we're told we had to wear our life jackets all times, our helmets, and we could not leave this small area. Yet when we went to Amsterdam and did the very same thing, basically all that happened is the guy took our money and said, "Be back in an hour." And we looked at each other blown away. We're like, what? And we were in these canals, dodging fishing boats, and somehow ended out towards the, outside, almost towards the sea. And we were dodging giant boats for that. And that is something that will not happen in the United States. Why? Because they baby us in such a way that other countries, especially in Europe, have the free will that we are sort of having that chipped away from us here in the United States.
We can gain that back on an individual basis, and a societal basis that will happen. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, the fact that we have freedom of speech, the fact that we have a free internet, the fact that we can have the First and Second Amendment and use them for our benefit to protect ourselves from being encroached upon by the U.S. government. So they find all manner of ways for us to turn over our free will by signing these crazy contracts and waivers, so that little by little we turn ourselves over to big mother government. It's a big plan. It's not an accident. And I was told by the controllers that all wars are created in the minds of men.
They are.
They're not an accident.
No. And when I went to study economics, I was told the very first day, how do you build an economy? And everyone had their own ideas, and the professor said, you're all wrong. Start a war. And we looked at each other like, huh? She said, well, if you start a war, what you're going to do is you're going to build up your military, build up your munitions, and you're going to have these contractors that are going to supply everything from toothpaste to bullets to clothes to socks, even to shoelaces. And then after you bomb the heck out of a city or destroy it, then you're going to send in contractors to rebuild it. And that was her answer in macroeconomics of how we can use war as a way to fix an economy. Here's a question that just came in. This must go back to earlier, and then we also have a caller. So let me actually go to the caller first, and then I'm going to ask this question. The caller is, where's the number? Area code 786. Welcome to the show. Where are you calling, and what's your name?
Hey, how's it going? It's Brett calling from Miami.
Brett, how you doing, my friend? All the way on the East Coast. Any questions or comments for Bob?
No, not yet. I just tuned in. Just want to say I love your show. Love what you guys are doing, and I'm looking forward to another great episode.
Thank you. Thank you. We got an awesome lineup for this week, and of course, being Thanksgiving next week, we're going to do what we can, and then of course, the week after that, Linda Moulton Howe is kicking off that Monday night, and we're going to have 4 full shows that week. Okay, let me read this one question, and by all means, Brett, when you're ready, just stay on and jump in when you have something you'd like to comment on or ask Bob or Johnny or myself and I. Okay, here's a question from Josh Blands, Minnesota. Did Bob say, this is in quotations, screwed up his life by going to law school?
No, I didn't say screwed up my life. I have to go back and look at the recording. I think I said I didn't want to screw up my life, and then I went into law school, and then we went off into something else.
Yes, because I remember we never really got into your law school career. We sort of went on a tangent from that point, so I'm glad you set that record straight. Mr. Blentz out there, I hope you got that answer, and of course, if you have a follow-up, feel free to send it on over, and I will ask it. Anyhow, let's go back to, of course, the Civil War and how we can get back our free will.
We can get back our free will by neutral positive thinking, and that is the only way I have found to do it. Realize my experiences in the SEAL teams and as in Kisei and Follow My Own Beat as a Mormon missionary, I gave over my free will and my thinking processes to oaths, covenants, and bloodletting of my own blood and oaths. And to get that back required about a decade of me undoing all that I gave away to bring it back inside me. The only way I was able to do it, and I didn't know that would happen. And I took this challenge that the spirit teachings of the Meyer material was not a religion, that you could not turn it into a religion. And I did not believe Christian when he told me that. And so I studied it to prove him wrong. And what I found my free will, and I took it back to myself. It tells you how to do it through neutral positive thinking. It wasn't a free ride. I had to work at it. And when I finally arrived and figured it out, I was told by the controllers, don't tell anyone else. They're afraid of this key to get out to the public. Because with this key, the free will and taking your thinking back for yourself, we will change ourselves into a new society unlike anything that is currently on this planet right now, and we have to do that. We no longer have a choice to play around with these phony games and these psyops that we're being shoved down our throats constantly with half-truths more lies than truths now and being done right in our face, and they're laughing at us. And we're sitting here looking stunned, like deers in a headlight. We don't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be that way.
Let me ask you a question. This is somewhat personal, but at the same time, it's very important because fear controls. I mean, literally, the more fear you instill in people, the more you can get them to be deers in headlights and control them by giving them something that you want them to do, which is not necessarily good for the population, either in a macro way or a micro way. Micro meaning individual people, or macro as in large groups of people, if not the entire world. Was there a time in your life, whether when you were in Spec Ops as a Navy SEAL or SAS in Australia, in the 50 plus embassies you were at, that you felt fear which controlled you?
No, I found it to be a curious thing. I was trained not to have fear. I think I was fearful one time. I was fearful one time in the SEAL training program in BUDS. And it had to do with tying my hands and legs together, my hands behind my back, and my feet were tied together. I was hogtied and thrown in the pool, and they made me swim across the pool and back.
Jeez.
And I failed it the first time, and I got out, and I was really afraid. And I was sitting there, and I turned to my buddy. I said, Tim, I go, Szymanski. I go, hey, he's an admiral now, by the way. I said, Szymanski, I go, hey, if I didn't do this in my life, I don't know what I would do with my life. And I made him hogtie me and throw me back in. And I about dislocated my shoulders, making sure I swam back and forth, hogtied. I got out of the water, and fear became a curious thing to me. It wasn't something that ruled me.
See, I'm glad that although yes, you had it at that time. I mean, I can't imagine anybody who isn't fearful when hogtied and thrown into a pool, because you're struggling not to drown. But to have gone through what you've experienced in your life, which is a lot, and to have lived it without fear, shows that you are truly open and clear. And that is probably why you're able to succeed in your life and to go and dive into these topics and look into the details, because the devil is always in the details. And so by not having that fear, you're not controlled.
That is correct. And that's where I found about free will. One can not have fear, but not have control over their thinking. Therefore, someone else is controlling their thinking. So they're not afraid, but now they're more like robotic. So when I figured those two components out, that's when I was approached and told, don't tell anyone about this, or we'll come at you. Well, I realized then that I found the key that unlocks the door to freedom, internal spiritual freedom, to allow my spirit to grow, because we reincarnate over and over. And if we want to reincarnate and relive the life we're living now, I think that's insanity. I'd like to progress a little bit. And the societies that we have will not allow us to progress in a spiritual way, because they will not allow us to have our own thinking for ourselves. They constantly have us signing over our free will to them.
That's right.
In a sense of fear. I will get hurt. I will get damaged. They don't want me to sue them.
You'll lose your money. You'll lose your custody of your son. You'll lose your house. Everything, right? It's all fear-based.
Everything is fear-based. And when you figure it out, here's the thing I hope to this show that I want to do. The real reason I want to do it is, you're my friend. You put your hand out to me when nobody knew anything about me. And I appreciate that. And so I wanted to bring something out to tell people about this, to help people. We now have to strategically think. We have to bring our lives together around the world in a network where we're all coming in line with this concept of not fearing and having our own free will and our thoughts back. And we will create that mass consciousness that will move us into a new society that the Pleiadians specifically laid out to Billy Meyer of what it shouldn't look like, and that we have to do it, and that all societies that exist today cannot move forward in the future. They are all self-destructive, suicidal type ways of living, thinking, and being. And if you can step back far enough and try to look at it from whatever perspective you have at the moment, it'll start to clear up, and you'll start seeing how things really are. Don't get locked into the devil of the details.
Yes.
That's where they want you. They want you watching CNN. Who is he going to pick for this? Who is he going to do for that?
That's right.
They're all just like, what is your thought? What is your idea? I tell you what, 99.99% of the time, they're always wrong. They don't care to be right. They just want to throw the fear out there. Once the fear is out there and it's percolating, now those who do not have control of their own thinking can be turned into how to react to their fear. They can be told how to do it. And it gets done with George Soros throwing millions of dollars over here with these stupid groups where they look for crazies who will like drop an axe at just saying do it, and then you have these riots. But they're instigated. They're instigated by small groups of people who are nutty enough to do it, and then you get the group mind think of those who don't have free will in themselves because they gave it over, and they don't think for themselves, and someone else is thinking for them, and they just get caught up in the mass explosion of the whole thing. And you're going to see that it grow exponentially across America, unfortunately. And I see this moving towards a civil war unless we stop it.
It really is, exactly. And that's what was leading to my next topic that I really wanted to talk about, civil war. As I mentioned, there's already been talks about California seceding. And if that happens, that's going to kick off basically the civil war of the 1860s, where you had all these southern states secede from the Union and then the Confederate States, and they had their own money and everything else like that, their own president, and said, screw you, Abraham Lincoln, we're doing our thing. And California is, already the United States is the largest economy of the world. Now, do I believe that anymore these days? I don't know if that's necessarily true, because you have China with 1 billion more people than us. It's about 1.3, if not 1.4 billion people. And the amount of goods that are coming out of China are, enormous. So the GDP, sure, the money is not there, the wages aren't there, but there's a lot of production coming from China. And of course, the industries, the buildings that are being built. And so I have to question if the U.S. is still on top. But assuming that we listen to the old models, that the U.S. of A., the good old Stars and Stripes, is the number one economy of the world, well, California, even though it's part of the USA, standalone is the 4th largest economy of the world. Can you imagine if California was its own country, the country of California? And I would think that if something like that was to start happening, you would have all these federal troops, Navy SEALs, Delta, Rangers, and everybody coming in and essentially declaring martial law and stopping the Californians from leaving the Union. But that would kick off a civil war, because you have these militia groups that would say, no more. We're not playing by your rules anymore. We've done enough. We've lost enough. We're going our rules. And what does that lead to? Not just civil war, but anarchy. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, Billy Meyer said we'll have anarchy in 2020. I have friends in other states, and they're telling me that as they drive past the gun stores, people are pulling up and they're filling their trucks with pallets of bullets, not like a box of bullets. They're getting ready. People around the country are stocking up food and bullets, and they're getting ready for what's coming. They're taking this really serious. There's a sector of society that will not stand down. Now look, we're getting played by both ends of the stick. The controllers are causing this. People have to wake up, take back their own thinking, calm themselves down, and as we do that one by one, we create what's called a mass consciousness, which has an effect like a radio frequency, and it has what it does is cause a swing wave. It creates a swing wave. And the more people you get lined up to create a swing wave, the farther it goes out into space, and it comes back with a resultant factor, causal, law of causality, cause and effect through the thinking process, and we can make a change to this. I hope it's not too late. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. I just know where we are is perilous.
Let me ask you this. I do believe that, first of all, based on the Maharishi effect experiments that they had in D.C., that consciousness, if everyone's on the same page and meditating or praying, whichever you want to call it, because essentially it's the same thing. You're focusing your thoughts and you're giving positive attention towards one thing, but it's exponential. So when they had, I believe it was 4,000 people that meditated in DC for a week, 7 days in a row, for 1 hour at a certain time, all 4,000 people, it would be the equivalent of, say, millions. They were able to decrease crime over those 7 days by 70%. Yet, the day after this experiment was over, crime shot back up. So, with that being said, that also proves that, of course, our consciousness and, of course, praying and meditating has an effect on everybody. And so, of course, if you remove the fear, keep free will, then you have the ability to, people can come together, I think, move on to the next level, such as Michio Kaku talked about, that we are living in a type 0 civilization where there's type 3, which could harness the power of their galaxy and then be intergalactic. Type 2 would be like, what I think it's boson Dyson or something like that, where they harness the power of their star to essentially create energy, and are interstellar, or we are type 0, as Michio Kaku said, or at least we think we are type 0, because I would have to think that if we've had crash and retrievals for so many decades, and some of these craft have been replicated by earthly materials or have been given to us, then we would already have been interstellar. So it just depends on what mindset. But here's the question before I ask this question that just came in from a listener. If we have the chance to finally, as Dr. Greer always talks about, join this Galactic Federation, is it true that they're just observing us, that they are not interfering with our lives, with humanity, because we have to figure it out for ourselves? Is that true or not?
From what I can gather, and it's an amalgamation of information, there's nothing I read directly that states this, so I'm giving you my presumption at the moment. I'll go dig it out and I'll find more information on it. I believe that the Pleiadians are monitoring us to keep us here, not to let us out, because our thinking is so screwed up. Yes. They don't want us causing problems in the universe. It's happened before. They don't want it to happen again. They feel responsibility to us because their ancestors put us in the position where we are in now, and they're trying to help us get out of it. If we can get to a certain stage in our evolutionary process, the spirit within us evolving to where we can relate with them, then we have the opportunity to enter into the Galactic Federation, which the High Council is in Andromeda with a race of people that they came across that they were only able to communicate with through their communication systems. And these are in their last stage of evolution to where they merge back with creation. And their suggestions, the Pleiadians have agreed to accept their suggestions and to work with those suggestions. And in that process, the Pleiadians were pretty much agreed to coming here and helping us out. In the writings, it says in 1844, that's when literacy started to move around the world. And of course, the historians like us to believe that we've always been literate, but we have not until about 1844. And that is when the Pleiadians came in and they started giving ideas to people to move us forward technologically, like ideas and technology swap information. We obtain craft. But here's an interesting thing. This has come directly from, I believe it was the Pleiadians. They said that if the Catholic Church had not destroyed the Library of Alexandria, we would be a spacefaring race 200 years ago. That means not going to the moon. That means traveling interstellar in space 200 years ago. That's how far back the Catholic Church has put us. Well, I don't want to wrap too much into black magic, but our whole society, our whole planet is wrapped up in magical concoctions, machinations for power and greed. And they mess us up. And they create religions and they create philosophies and political ideas. Well, my friend, I'm going to tell you right now, every system that I see out there is religious based.
Yes.
From the courts to the politics to the city council to the school system. Here's another thing. I think it was 329,000 years ago. I don't remember the exact number, but it was over 300,000 years ago. The Lyrans and Weigand came here, and they came in mass.
Weigand. It's funny you mentioned that because that reminds me of the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, which was written by Carl Sagan.
Correct. These movies throw stuff out at you that's real because it fits into your spirit memory, which you can access through your mind. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes like Star Wars. It becomes like, that's familiar to me. But you don't really know it because they're telling us that we're the only ones in the whole universe. So 329,000 years ago or 369,000 years ago, the Weigans and Lyrans came here and they had 100, now check this number out. You'll find it in the Bible, 144,207 leaders in a hierarchical societal relationship of a pyramid structure, which they then overlaid on us. And they gave us our religions. And they played God, saying they created the universe and we believed it. Yes. And then they did everything possible to disconnect us from the spirit within ourselves so that we don't have the ability to even be aware that we have free will.
Yes. You know what? And that brings me to the prison planet thing, because keeping us here and, of course, having all these people in hierarchy to control us and prevent us from getting out there and causing these problems, because we are, such a primal yet, what's the key word I'm looking for? We are not set to go out there, because if we are still so arcane in fighting each other and killing each other over the stupidest things, then how can we take that to the next level and interact with other civilizations when our civilization can't even get along?
Well, I'll tell you something interesting about this. So you brought up a really excellent point. There was a race that in the writings that came here and they discovered religion. So they took all the religious books back to their planet. And then within about 3 or 7 years, they were in a world war. They were ready to blow their whole planet up because they were all fighting over whose ideas were right and whose was wrong. Then the High Council came in and stopped it and destroyed all the books and banned Earth for 100 years. No one could come here. Then around 1900, a ship comes into our atmosphere. They were doing research. There's a bunch of people on board. They got sick. They couldn't, with their medicines, fix it because it was an unknown disease to them from our Earth that doesn't bother us. They couldn't, their ship had a malfunction in the drive system and they couldn't leave our atmosphere. So they radioed for help and they were told, no one's coming to get you. The Earth is banned. This is what you're going to do. You're going to raise your ship to the highest potential you can in the atmosphere, drop it down, and before you hit the surface, detonate yourselves. And they did it. And that's what was the explosion in Russia around 1900, where everyone talks about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Johnny Webb's got a question. Go ahead, Johnny. Yeah.
I'm thinking that what you just said there, the Tunguska explosion in the 1900s in Russia. I'd heard that was a UFO that was actually using one of the waveguide rods, and so what it was doing was it was affecting the antimatter or anti-gravity, in fact, and that's what caused that explosion. Can you confirm that at all, Bob?
Well, what the Meyer material says is that they actually had syphilis in the ship, and they couldn't cure it, and they didn't know what to do. I imagine how they got syphilis. I mean, what are they doing here?
Screwing us or something? I know, right?
Screwing us around. So they were basically told that they had to detonate their ship, and that's what they did. They took the ship up as high as they could, they let it drop down, and then however they detonated their
self-destruct system or something, right?
Yeah, they blew them. It was like a nuclear explosion.
That's right. And it has all the hallmarks of a nuclear explosion, just like I can't really recall the name. Is it Bach?
They were called the Barden people. The BARDA, and they since after that they joined the High Council, the Federation.
Now that reminds me of the ancient Hindu text. Is it the Baha? I don't even want to try to mispronounce it, but the point is they describe a nuclear explosion to the T, thousands of years before we supposedly had the Manhattan Project, which led us to figure out how to divide atoms and send off a chain reaction, which goes on for infinity, by the way, which is why we are not setting off nukes. Not just because we're going to destroy humanity and Earth and cause certain places of this planet to be uninhabitable for tens of thousands of years, but this, when we set off a nuke, it affects civilizations far, far, far from here. So when you hear something like this happening 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, I mean, obviously, when they're talking about the explosion and it had the light was, 10,000 times the strength or the light of the sun, and people were turning into dust and things like that. That essentially is what, a layman who doesn't know anything about a nuclear explosion would be describing. And so that goes to show that they had this technology back then. Now, I do have a very conventional question I've been sitting on for 11 minutes now. This is another international question. This is Diane Macron, Calgary, Canada. This, like I said, conventional. Will Trump take on ISIS, and what will result?
There was a point in time that Billy had said he could eradicate ISIS. I think we passed that point. I don't think we could. They're in too many countries. It's more than just an ideology. These people are being backed by the secret services that are behind the scenes, so to speak. This is being, I even suspect that Russia has their own little ISIS group that they're keeping back in their back pocket somewhere in their country, hidden away and training to unleash on us if we want to screw with them. I see Russia entering Turkey and France and England and Norway and the Balkans and Canada and Alaska, and I see China encroaching over here to Hawaii and then coming over to the mainland on the west coast going nation. That's what I see. I see those chess pieces already positioned, and I'm talking from a military strategic. They're already pre-positioned.
I got a question from George in Glasgow on Facebook in Scotland, and he asked Bob, what does the Palladians say about our heaven, a home base for the human soul?
Heaven. They have a different when it comes to using they have different wording for, they call heaven, they call it the fine matter world. And it doesn't exist in the sense that we see it, where we go to heaven and pass the pearly gates, or we go to Allah, or we go to nirvana. It's basically a fine matter world, or a spirit world, where our spirit goes to rest and re-gear another human form to continue the spiritual evolution of gaining wisdom and knowledge over the centuries and millennia and millions of years. It's said in the Maya material that we'll go about 40 million years of actual Earth living years, where we will progress through until we can get to a place where we're not incarnating all the time. But in order to become a light body, that's like 1.5 billion years. So when people say that they're moving to their light body and all this other stuff, what they're doing is they're pulling information and they're mashing it together in a salad that doesn't with what the players say. And so they have spent a lot of time with Billy trying to explain all this stuff and to have it make sense, which then caused Billy to start writing what he called the spirit teachings. And they together have made these writings, and they use these writings on their planet and other planets to help them in their spiritual evolution, which the players say they're about 30 million years of us in spirit evolution. Nice. I don't know what that means, 30 million years, but it's quite a long time.
Well, so I brought that up because, you know, as a Christian myself, Jesus talks about this earth is not really our friend. We must go beyond this earth in spirit form to a home base, you know, to a heaven or whatever. And also, I realised that the aliens, when they talk to humans, they talk about using thought rather than physical to, you know, to control UFOs or whatever. Again, it's a sort of detachment from the physical human being to the almost cloud-based soul, you know.
Okay. It's interesting you say cloud-based soul. They don't use the word soul. Soul is kind of like the spirit and the body combined. They use the word spirit. So there's words that we use that they don't use. I found that as I started studying this stuff, that the religious terms that I used, I couldn't use them anymore. I had to come up with new words like fluidal force, material consciousness, spirit consciousness, material subconsciousness, spirit subconsciousness, to learn kind of like a little new language. It wasn't really difficult. I just had to understand their terms and their definitions. And it was paralleled very closely to what we spiritually, but where they diverge is we're genuflecting, bending our knee to Allah, to Buddha, to Jesus, whereas they say, don't do that, because you're giving your free will over, you're giving your thought over to a third party to do things for you, and that's witchcraft. That's exactly what witchcraft is. So when I started to realize what they were teaching me, I started taking these teachings to my pots and presenting it to them, and it was coming back to me that it was all true, and then they would leave the room. I'm just at that, because I don't want to get far into that stuff. That gets really far out there, and I really did some doo-doo. But what the word soul means is really the psyche of your conscious, material conscious mind. That's how they use the term soul. We use the term soul as our spirit. They use the term soul as the psyche of the material conscious mind, which dissolves upon our death. And then we renew into a new body, and we build a new psyche, a new personality, but we have the same spirit form. We get to have a new personality, whether we're a man or a woman. We don't become a bird or a rock. We stay within our creation, which is a human being.
Yes.
And we try knowledge, but if we're disconnected from our spirit, which the entire world, the societies of the entire world have a connection with our inner spirit, our progression that Pleiadians tell us is about only 6 months out of a 100-year lifespan. So imagine how many times we have to come here to get a 10-year progression in our spirit. I don't want to do that.
I know, right? And what about that rule that you're here to learn some sort of life lesson, and if you don't, you're going to die, have your memory wiped, and come back to learn it, and then whatever you did in your past life that was wrong, then you're set to do your next life until you're finally into the what do they call it? The fourth, I don't want to say fourth density. When you finally move up and up and up and eventually start having your soul in a body on another planet. But in order to do that, you have to accomplish what you are set to learn. And you're not born and told this is the problem that you've had, this is what you need to learn. You need to figure this out on your own. Everybody out there has to figure this out on their own. Now, I did say we were going to do 60 to 90 minutes max, but it's been such a fabulous show. I've kept it even longer than that. I must say, Bob, we are cutting it close, so I want to give you a couple minutes to say if there's any missing components that you haven't had a chance to say them, because you will be back. We will have you back in a few weeks, definitely before the end of 2016, and then of course people will be able to hear you on our very own Coast to Coast PM radio network, hopefully once a week at least, if you as much as you can handle. But let me give you the last couple minutes for you to give whatever messages that we forgot to ask that you think is relevant. And then when I close the show, just please keep quiet and hang by so I could tell you something when we are officially off air.
Thank you, Dr. J. I'll just stay within the topics that we've covered and try to fill in some more information in some of the places that we went to help people in doing any research they want to do. For example, with overpopulation, what it does when you have overpopulation is you have more fecal matter, you have more ground used for growing fruits and vegetables, then you have more bugs, and then you have less water because it's going towards production of food and also production of clothing. Then you have more oil drilling, and see how the more people you have, the more you take from the earth.
Yes.
And it just becomes, at some point, it's just going to tilt, and it's going to do it really fast.
Yes.
And the second is Meyer foretold of our two coming civil wars in 1981. This is not something new. And Clarence told him around that time, we had already passed the tipping point and we're headed in that direction. So what I see is damage control now. Damage control and taking our free will back. These events look like they're really going to happen, but we need to manage ourselves and move into a new way of seeing ourselves and connecting to our spirit and networking with each other around the world while we still can, and creating a new conscious state of mind and start creating a new society for ourselves. Because the people in power, they don't give a crap.
They don't. It's all about themselves.
Right. The next thing is Billy said that there are going to be in the near future 50 million Muslim Middle Eastern refugees going into Europe and America. And that number will grow to 250 million. And that is an unabsorbable amount of people. It's going to be war refugees, economic refugees, social refugees. And with that, they'll bring their culture, their religion, and we'll have a clash. Now, I'm going to tell you, this was pre-planned. This is not an accident. This is orchestrated. Then we go into the way to get free will back is you really got to study the Meyer material and read the contact notes. That's a good place to start. And just start looking at it and trying to kind of understand what they're saying. It's not that hard. And then in some of the books, like there's a new book coming out in 2 weeks called the Talmud Manual. And the Talmud Manual is said to have been written by Judas Iscariot. It said that Judas Iscariot was the one that turned Jesus in, not Judas Iscariot. Judas Iscariot is the one who hung himself. He was the son of a Sadducee. Jesus lived after, now check this out. Jesus lived after the cross. 3 days later, he was leaving town, and that's when he was seen. He had a meal with everyone, and he took off with his mom and his wife and his kids, and they went off into Turkey and other areas, and they never came back. He didn't want to die. And he lived to be about like 100 plus years old, 102, 109, around there. And I was on an op with a guy in the CIA, and he was commissioned to take this little 5'1" guy who was a pedophile from Missouri back to Israel without a passport. He was going to jail they were afraid they were going to kill him. And he told me that Mossad told him that guy was a direct descendant of Jesus Christ. And I said, wait a minute, Jesus was never married, had no kids. He goes, no, he had 5. And that was a direct descendant. And they were going to pay me $1 million to do it. And so he got him from Missouri over to Israel. Then, and that was before I ever heard about Billy Meyer. So this Talmud Emmanuel is coming out, and it's basically like a rewrite of the Bible. It's the actual okay, there's manuscript X that people say the Bible is written off of. This is to be this manuscript X written by Judas Iscariot. He was a scribe. He wrote down all of Emmanuel's teachings, which we called, Jesus Christ was later given his name. That was not his name.
And this is all 2,000 years ago.
Yes, 2,000 years ago. Now, here's the thing. I'm sitting there having dinner with that lamp. That's the son of Billy Meyer over in Switzerland. And I was just enjoying, a real nice guy, speaks English. I really liked him, really likable. And I'm sitting there, we were just kind of talking, and one of the ladies asked him a question. He goes, oh, yeah, the spirit form of Emmanuel, or Jesus Christ, is the same spirit form that Billy Meyer is, which is the same spirit form of Elijah. And in fact, all the 7 prophets of the Bible are his same spirit form. Though he reincarnates back in life with a new personality, with a fresh clean slate, it's the same spirit form, bringing the same information each time. What the Pleiadians did in 1844 is started giving people technical knowledge through inspiration, so that they built our society, help us bring us into this technological age, so that we could then disseminate these spirit teachings throughout the whole world, so they'll never be lost again. Isn't that interesting?
Absolutely, yes.
Then I wanted to go into on nuclear explosions. It said in the contact notes that there have been several eras of nuclear explosions. Sodom and Gomorrah were nukes. They were small ones, though. 50,000 years ago, they were nukes. There's been, I think it was like, I don't know the number, I'm thinking 3 periods in our time where we had the technology to launch nukes at each other, and we did it. Though we lived in, like, I don't know, stone houses and stuff, that there was high technology here. But I think it was brought here. I don't think like we had guys that were, working in a cave and they found out how to make uranium into a bomb. It wasn't like that. So there's some evidence of that exists around the world. There's a man, Wendell Stevens, that he went out looking around and he said he found some evidence of it. Like Death Valley in California, that was nuked. That's what the contact notes say. There's other places around the world. The Sahara, oh, this is interesting, Atlantis and the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert was a, hold on one second. It was ET races that nuked each other in North America.
Really?
Monument Valley and Fire Valley and Death Valley.
Now,
yes.
Where's Fire Valley exactly?
You have to look it up. I'm just reading it.
Yeah, I'm going to. I'm absolutely going to, and I hope everybody out there does that as well, too.
The Lemur Gobi Desert is another place.
Mm-hmm.
Atlantis did exist. It was a little further back in time than our records that we know of.
Yes.
And they got in a fight with the people who lived over in the Sahara Desert. That used to be like a real nice forest. And so so what the Sahara Desert guys did is they redirected a comet, meteor, and slammed it into the Atlantic and sank Atlantis. And Atlantis went over with a dissolving ray and just wiped out. I think it was called the City of Mu. Just wiped it out. Also, there's planets. We had more planets than we do now. The asteroid belt between us and Mars was a planet, and that was called Malona, and then Mars. And Earth was the second planet from the sun, not the third. And they got in a fight. Yeah, they got in a fight. And in the contact notes, Malona, the Martians went over to Malona and redirected the ocean into a massive volcano that it its funnel went down to the core of the planet, and the planet blew up. And so what the Melonians did is they got pissed, and they redirected the comet and slammed it into Mars and blew out their atmosphere. So some of the Martians were able to get off and get to our planet. So we do have some Martians running around here.
Well, it's ironic because now you just confirmed what John Lear has been saying for a long time.
What was that?
That Mars has had life for the longest time, and that there are Martians here all the time, and that he believes that Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Mountain Yeti, whatever you want to call it, skunk ape, are all Martians. And the reason why you see them 1 minute and then you can't find any single trace of them after is because they're interdimensional and they could just zoom back to Mars where they live underground. And he also says that usually the case is that they're wearing some sort of suit to protect them from the radiation that we have on the surface of the Earth because they're used to living in the underground catacombs of Mars. So you just actually confirmed what one of our favorite guests who comes on the show fairly frequently just said. And everybody, I hope you know that John Lear will be back again soon. Anyway,
cool.
Lieutenant Bob Weigand, it has been an awesome pleasure. We will absolutely do this again before the year is over. And then, of course, everybody, just so you know, Sean David Morton will be on tomorrow night, and he will be also syndicating his show on our very own Coast to Coast PM radio network. Now, don't forget, Dr. J Radio Live is not just on our Coast to Coast PM radio network. It is also on 4 other networks, plus 27 terrestrial stations, and TuneIn.com, Shoutcast, and more importantly, on iTunes. And so, some of the networks that it's on is Late Night in the Midlands, which I believe is in Indiana. Then there's PSN, which is based out of Florida. And, of course, we have the Deprogrammed radio network in the United Kingdom, set up by Johnny Webb, and another one, which name I do not know at the moment, that Johnny has started syndicating our show there as well. Like I said, we have talks with a station in Spain and one in Australia, because more and more people out there are awakening and finally coming towards the light and realizing that what was once taboo or ridiculed is actually the truth. Now, let me just give you some other words, of course, I want to mention. I already told you that tomorrow night, Sean David Morton will be on the show. Thursday, we have Preston Dennett. I haven't figured out what's going to be on next week quite yet, but you'll hear things soon. And, of course, Thanksgiving night will have to be either a rerun or one of our pre-recorded shows. Then, right after Thanksgiving weekend, that Monday, we will be starting with Linda Moulton Howe. Dr. Greer will be on soon, as will Nassim Harriman, as we've been negotiating this for quite some time. This will be the 4th time he's been on this show. And we have so many more people that are due and will be coming on shortly. Also, don't forget, we have the Watchers promo. All you have to do is go to drjradiolive.com. That is drjradiolive.com. Remember, that is the only name you have to remember. That is the name of our YouTube channel where we archive our shows, where you can watch them for free. I don't believe in charging for shows. Why? Because if I did, then it'd only be stuck in the groups of people that are fully engulfed in believing into these topics. If you put it out there for free, then people on the fence will listen, and a lot of them, before you know it, will start to take things seriously and come over to this side of the fence, and they will be able to spread the word, and that is how we will finally get to disclosure. That is why I always believe that disclosure is in your hands, everybody. Please use the skills you have, whether you're a broadcaster, a writer, or even if you buy a simple book and you place it on your coffee table and you have some skeptics coming over your house, family members, neighbors, friends, whatever they are, and they happen to see that book and pick it up, they may change their lives forever. A couple more things on our website. Every single guest who's ever made a movie or written a book, all you have to do is click on the Books and Videos tab, which is on the top of the menus of our site, and scroll down, find their name, and it'll take you to their corresponding Amazon page. So we encourage you to do so because you will get better discounts buying them there as opposed to buying them in other places. We also, like I said, there's 2 Watchers deals going on. One of them includes the newest one, Watchers 10 DNA, which includes Watchers 7, and it also has the latest book written by L.A. Marzulli and a year subscription to their monthly magazine, PPS. I believe it's Paranormal Prophecy and Supernatural. That is a $92.99, but if you buy it from our site, you get $39.95. That's what you pay. So that is a really big discount. I think well over 60%. So we encourage you to do that. Don't forget Exopolitics, run by Dr. Michael Sala. I've been officially appointed as an advisor. So for those of you who want to learn more from Exopolitics, just click on the tab on the site and it'll take you there, and there you will get a chance to pick what advisor you want to move forward. And from there on, of course, we also have the Resonance Academy run by Nassim Harriman. Again, these are all tabs there. What 2 tabs that are missing that will be up soon again will be Linda's earthfiles.com. Make sure you check that out because that is the cutting edge place to check daily for news. That's why I always love having her on, because no 2 shows are alike. Same thing with Lieutenant Bob Weigand. No 2 shows have ever been alike. And Preston Dent. There's a handful of guests that I usually... most of the time, I wait 6 months at least before I put on a guest, but people who have so much information that can make a new show every single time, I will bring on more frequently. And as you heard tonight, Lieutenant Weigand, this tonight's show was very different than the last show he did with David Sarita, the last show he did with himself, and the show he did before that with David Sarita. And David will be back on too. And of course, Dr. Greer will be back on. We're just trying to nail down a date while he is doing his tours and his special CE5 training groups. Again, you could find all that on Sirius. I think it's SiriusDisclosure.com. Sirius as in the star system. SIRIUS Disclosure.com. I also want to thank my team. We got Johnny Webb in London, all the way awake till 5 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. I want to thank him. And Tom Schaefer, who is in Miami, where it is midnight now for him. And he has done a lot of stuff to get this show ready and running for us. Not to mention, he runs our website and does so much more. I want to thank him. And of course, Lou Sheehan, who is our researcher. And there's a lot of other people that deserve their thanks. But the most important people I want to thank are you, the listener. As I said earlier, disclosure is in your hands. So please keep on listening. Spread the word. That's all we ask you to do. Just listen. Even if you don't agree with what you're hearing, keep on listening, because one day something you will hear will click in your mind, and that may change your life forever for the better. So please do so and spread the word, because POTUS is not going to give us the answers. We're not going to have Obama or Trump or anybody stand on the White House lawn and say, just so you know, we've had crash craft, we've had deals with extraterrestrials, and we've traded technologies and let them abduct people, and we've killed many people to keep them silent. Just so you know, that's not going to happen. The way it's going to happen is with you, the listeners. I have it on good authority that once more than 50% of the population, when the majority of the population believes without a doubt, not only that the world or the universe is populated with extraterrestrials, that they have been visiting us for a very, very long time, 270 million years, according to Linda Moulton Howe, where they terraformed Earth to make way for us, human beings, Homo sapiens, to roam the Earth. The point is that's why we need you to spread the word. And I already see it happening on TV. Ancient Aliens all the time. What you see is that people will be on, and you don't have a skeptic on for the exact same time taking away what they just said. So, for instance, 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago, 1 minute would be pro-UFO, another minute would be anti-UFO. Now, every major network has some show. So, things are progressing. Obviously, now we do have a double-edged sword with this internet and the ability to film something and put it up on YouTube and share it with the world before they have a chance to take it down. But the reason why I say it's double-edged sword is because you have to worry about the NSA, on the other hand, monitoring each and every one of you, which is why I always tell everybody, don't put all your money in the bank accounts, because the moment we have an EMP, what's going to happen, an electromagnetic pulse, is you're not going to have access to your bank accounts. You're not going to be able to go on the internet. So if you don't want a repeat of the 30s, start stashing stuff, preferably stuff that you could trade, like those combi bars that are made of silver and gold. There's just so much to learn. Again, everybody go to drjradiolive.com. Remember, that is the same name as Instagram, Twitter, Flickr, Tumblr, Facebook, YouTube, Google+, even Gmail. Even I have 2 email accounts, info@drjradiolive and drj@drjradiolive.com. And of course, again, once more time, I want to thank my guest, I want to thank my team, and you, the listener. With that being said, this is Dr. J, and we are officially signing off.